Shakur Stevenson hasn't been quiet this week, and honestly, you can't blame him. He's fired up, frustrated, and letting the world know exactly how he feels about Gervonta "Tank" Davis potentially stepping into the ring with Jake Paul for an exhibition match. To Stevenson, that's not just a questionable move, it's flat-out disrespectful to the sport of boxing. The idea that one of the most dangerous and talented fighters in the game would opt for a spectacle over a real challenge doesn't sit right with. Stevenson made it clear he thinks Tank is ducking. He's been calling himself the best fighter in the sport, and if Tank doesn't buy that, Shakur wants him to come prove otherwise in the ring, but instead of real movement toward that showdown. Stevenson's seeing his name tossed aside in favor of what he sees as a sideshow attraction, and that, to him, is infuriating. The tension between these two isn't new, but it's definitely heating up. Tank has consistently brushed Stevenson off, dismissing him as a boring fighter who's more interested in chasing a big payday than testing himself. According to Tank, if Stevenson wants to prove he's elite, he should start by taking on Gervonta Davis. That's not just a challenge, it's a direct shot at the so-called brotherhood between Shakur and Gervonta. In Tank's eyes, that relationship is just an excuse, something they hide behind to avoid taking a real risk in the ring. He didn't mince words when he addressed the issue. They keep saying they're not going to fight their brother. "Get the f*** out of here," Tank said, clearly fed up with what he sees as a manufactured bond designed to duck a dangerous opponent. From his standpoint, if they're serious about legacy and competition, there's no room for excuses. And Stevenson, he's not backing down. In response to Tank's flirtation with an exhibition against Jake Paul, Shakur fired back, calling it a stain on boxing. To him, it's simple. If Tank really believes he's better, prove it. Get in the ring. Stevenson isn't just throwing out empty words either. He's been chasing this fight for a while now. He feels like he's earned it, that he's the most complete and technical fighter in the sport, and he sees Tank's avoidance as validation of that claim. What stings most for him, though, is the way Tank has continued to disregard him, as if he doesn't even belong in the conversation. And when Shakur hears about exhibition talk instead of real fights being made, it only fuels his belief that Davis is taking the easy road. But while Stevenson demands respect and recognition, not everyone's convinced he's walking the walk. His recent opponents haven't exactly been world beater. In fact, some would argue he's playing it safe, cherry-picking fights to protect his undefeated record while waiting for a monster payday. His decision to fight Josh Padley, a relatively unknown boxer who doubles as an electrician, raised more than a few eyebrows. It was a 9th-round stoppage win, sure, but who was he fighting, and what kind of message does that send? That's the criticism that's been building, that Shakur talks like he's ready to fight the best, but when it comes time to sign contracts, he goes for guys who aren't even in the top tier. Then there's the contradiction that keeps coming up. Stevenson says he wants big names only, fighters who'll push him, challenge him, force him to rise to the occasion, yet he dismissed potential bouts with talented up-and-comers like Ernesto Mercado and Jadier Herrera. That's a bit hard to square, especially when he turns around and steps into the ring with a part-time boxer most fans have never heard of. The optics aren't great. To those watching from the outside, it feels like Shakur is trying to time his run perfectly, staying undefeated, staying marketable, and staying healthy long enough to land that golden ticket, a blockbuster fight with Gervonta Davis. But in the meantime, fans are left wondering when and if he'll actually fight someone who can punch back with real skill. And yet, for all the criticism Stevenson takes, he hasn't stopped campaigning for what he wants. He's made it clear that he's not chasing clout or attention. He's chasing greatness. He sees Tank as the biggest obstacle in front of him, and he wants that smoke. But from the outside looking in, it's easy to question the urgency. If he's really hungry for a legacy-defining fight, why pass on legit contenders like Floyd, Schofield, or Joe Cordina? Neither of those names is on the elite tier just yet, but they're solid fighters, and fighting them would at least move Stevenson closer to his goal. Instead, he's taken safer routes, and whether that's by design or by necessity, it has fans asking tough questions. In the midst of all this, Stevenson also shared his thoughts on Tank potentially rematching Lamont Roach. It's not a fight that has people buzzing, but it's one that Stevenson believes carries real danger for Davis. "I think Lamont is a hell of a fighter," he said, noting that if Tank isn't sharp, that bout could go sideways fast. There's a subtle jab in that statement, an implication that Tank might be more vulnerable than people realize, especially if he's taking fights lightly or not staying fully locked in. And of course, Stevenson mentioning Roach is his way of saying, if you're going to take a risk, do it against someone like me, not someone further down the food chain. It's part challenge, part criticism, and part calculated message to keep the pressure on Tank to step up and fight him. Next, from a broader perspective, this whole situation speaks to the current state of boxing, where hype, money, and matchmaking politics often override merit. Stevenson's frustrations tap into something fans have been feeling for a while. The best fights aren't happening when they should. Instead, we get call-outs, online spats, and exhibition distractions, and that's what makes Shakur's anger so relatable to hardcore boxing fans. He's not just mad because he's not getting the fight, he's mad because the sport keeps letting these kinds of opportunities slip through the cracks. Meanwhile, the division remains clogged with unfinished business, half-hearted title defenses, and a growing gap between what fans want and what they're actually getting. But let's be real, Stevenson isn't blameless in all this. His recent matchmaking choices have dulled some of the fire behind his words. If he wants to be taken seriously as the best in the sport, he's got to show that in the ring, not just say it in interviews. Right now, there's a bit of a credibility. He talks about being avoided, about others ducking him, but when he steps into the ring, it's not always against the kind of opponent that backs up that narrative. There's a disconnect between what he's saying and what he's doing, and that's where critics are sinking their teeth in. At the end of the day, boxing fans just want clarity. They want the drama settled in the ring, not on social media. If Tank truly thinks Shakur is all hype, then step in and shut him up. If Shakur believes he's the most skilled fighter alive, then prove it against someone dangerous, someone fans respect. Until that happens, the talk, no matter how loud or confident, remains just that, talk. These two are circling each other, dancing around the fight that could define both of their careers. Whether it actually happens or fades into the long list of what-ifs in boxing history, that's what everyone's watching for. And in the meantime, this sport continues to frustrate fans' dream matchups that stay stuck in limbo. Tank and Shakur could be the next great rival. They're young, undefeated, confident, and bring completely different styles to the table. Tank with the power, Shakur with the precision. It's a classic setup, but if they keep avoiding each other, the fire will fade, and the moment. Past timing is everything in boxing. The best fights happen not just because the fighters are ready, but because the moment demands it, and right now, the moment is screaming for this fight to happen.